It's too much debt. We can't legally borrow the debt. Untrue. The debt that we can borrow is legislatively set at 3% of our overall tax roll value. Everything we talked about tonight is exempt from that law. So any money that we borrow from Ryback or from the infrastructure bank is exempt. Right now, based on the end of FY22's overall roll value, we can borrow that big 82.9 million in the middle. Really, we still have almost 70 million. This summer, we're going to enter into our full revaluation, which is going to dramatically increase our roll value, which is going to push that 82.9 even higher. Still doesn't matter. It's all irrelevant for the discussion tonight. There's no limit. The other thing we do focus on, and which is relevant, is for a small town, we can only borrow so much money, and we can only afford to pay back so much in debt at one time. And if we take on too much debt, it can have an impact on our bond rating, which could affect interest rates on a go-forward basis. So we are monitoring that in this conversation. That's that slide. This is an important slide, and I'll tell you why. Not because what's on the slide, but this slide really indicates the methodology that we're using to give information to you on our bond debt today and in the future, and on your tax impact. Almost everything here is variable. So I get calls all the time. I want to know what the project is going to cost me in terms of the property that I own. Impossible for me to tell you what that is. I'm going to tell you why for a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't even know what the project is yet. Like, I don't even know how much money we're borrowing. So that's a big if right there. So really, it's project amount. Once the council makes a decision on Monday as an upper limit, at least that sets an upper limit. And then I can start to work backwards. So over the next several months, each of the pieces of information on this slide are going to become more real and more actual. And that's going to refine the accuracy of the bond and bond scenarios that we're providing to you on homes that are 500,000, 750, a million, and 1.25. Those are the categories of scenarios that we've used. So running through this list, project amounts are variable, state aid ratio. Okay, I'm going to comment in a minute about some of the larger numbers that you've been hearing and read in the paper, 150 to 180. All of those are totally dependent on what the legislature does in this session, which will end in June, whether we can secure additional state aid ratio and subsidy or not. If the ratio is not there, you are definitely not talking about 180 million. You're probably not, you might not even be talking about 150 unless we get that extra support. That's not my decision, that's the council's decision, but I'm kind of giving you a prelude to what the recommendation will be. The issuance date, our schedules that you're going to see on the engagement site, when you click on the document, on bond scenarios, you're going to run into a series. It's going to show you the assumptions as a spot in time. They are estimates only. No one should rely on them. But if we didn't provide you with some of the information on methodology, you'd be asking, and rightfully so, you're not being transparent, you're not giving us any idea what this is going to cost. So we need to start somewhere. So I'm trying to bring you along on this journey of what the methodology is and what it's going to take, and when in the timeline we're going to actually be able to be fairly accurate to tell you how it's going to affect you in particular based on the property value, based on the value of your property. As we work through that list, it's interest rates. A couple of years ago, they were 2%. Now we're at it for a 25-year term. We're about 4.25%. We're not borrowing money for like couple of years. So I have no way to tell you based on the economic conditions, based on another national election, what the interest rates are going to be. That's going to have a major effect on our schedules and a major effect on tax impact. So right now we're at 4.25% today. Guarantee you that's going to change. Hope it goes down. It may not. Could be 2%, could be 10%. I really don't know. Whatever we lock into when we issue debt, we are locked into for 10 years. So if we lock in high, we're not going to be able to refinance for 10 years. We did that just recently with the coal bond, and I think we saved millions of dollars in terms of the refinancing. We're not there yet. Hopefully we don't have to. Hopefully things will plateau and the rates will start coming back down. Tax rate. So everybody wants to calculate out what they might owe based on the tax rate. What's going to have a big effect on that is values, right? Assessed values. Like I mentioned, we're going to go through a full revaluation here this summer for December 31. So we're going to have before we get to borrow money a couple of years from now, our assessed values are going to be totally different. Higher the values, lower the tax rate. That's how it works, right? So more value, your asset in town, the more it's worth, the less rate you pay. right? And it's all driven by operating and tax levy cost. Our costs of operation are somewhat static. Values increase, your asset, I always want my assets to be worth more, tax rate will come down. So you got to wait for that to happen. And the other one's operating budget, right? So average operating budget impacts. In the scenarios that you'll see, we carry about 1.5 to 3% on average over that period of time. That's a good sweet spot to be. We're working with the school administration to try to refine that. Very, very difficult. This next year in budget, we just all negotiated teachers' contracts. I negotiated 5 municipal contracts, a lot of pressure. Just like we pay more at home for electricity and other costs, in an operation that's about an $80 million town operation, all our costs are up. So we got to balance and work with that. Let's see. I'm going to move on. So these are not for you to view. These are just for examples. So when you go onto the Engage site, you click on it on your computer, you can open them up. You can really look at all the numbers. This is this captures all of the town's existing debt. You want to know what's out there? This is going to tell you everything that we've got. This slide, I'm going to try to add these hopefully by tomorrow when we release it. This slide runs through 2040, but the debt that we're talking about runs through 2052. So the schedule you'll probably see tomorrow is going to be a little short, but eventually we'll add it and we'll get you through the full schedule of debt repayment. This is for a 2024. This is for, let's see, this on the next slide. It shows 24 and 26 on potential issuance. This is a critical point when you look at this information. This is not just about this. These slides here, this debt schedules are not just a school project. It's the whole town. It's all debt. So it's hopefully a future new highway garage in a few years from now. You follow some numbers. Here's some remaining school bonds added in of that $5 million bond. Down here, we've got a road maintenance bond of $4 million that's going to be tied in. You've got a highway facility estimated at $12 million. Based on cost today, I just don't know. And then as you run through each slide, I've been using, and this may change as of Monday, a 130 million option, a 120, a 100, and an 80. That's kind of the world we were living in a short time ago. That's changed a little bit, so our slides will change. What you'll find here is this is the $120 million option. You've got 70 million and 50. There'll be 2 allocations. We'll borrow debt. It's over a 5-year period. We're not going to borrow 120 million at one time. We're going to spread that out based on how the rates are. This schedule will change. If rates are high, we'll borrow less upfront, depending on what our fiscal advisors tell us. What I'm trying to tell everybody is everything is variable. Do not base a decision today on what you see here. By the time you get to the ballot box in November, we're going to be showing you very, very different financial projections that you're going to be able to rely on at a much higher level than you can rely on these, although all the methodology is going to be the same. Just the assumptions, variables will change. This will work through. It'll show you tax need, per example. You could run them from top down based on year. So this schedule is in place for all of those options, 130, 120, 180, okay? The next slide that you run into is going to be the actual tax impact slide. So as you work from left to right, you're going to actually work on the top of the slide. You're going to see the general fund, let me see, I lost it actually. Why I always have paper with me. I'm still trying to break the habit, but it comes in handy once in a while. We've got the school department, we've got general fund, debt service, and library. So one of the key things I want to draw your attention to as you look at the schedules is you're going to find points in time when you look at the tax impact, residential tax levy. We actually set this up where we broke out all the commercial taxes and all the tangible taxes so that what you're looking at is just a tax impact on residential property. You're going to bring yourself across and you're going to be able to see actual tax impact on individual years. And when principal hits, you're going to see spikes. And then what our job is going to be to do between now and the time this goes to the ballot is lay out a schedule where we can smooth the debt over the 25 years so we can actually afford 120, 150 million dollars. So this is a critical piece of the methodology that we're going to use. There's one other thing I just want to bring your attention to, and then I'll stand down and happy to answer any questions later or during the course of just the work week, is that we have a debt fund. All the debt in town is not in the general fund of the town. It's not in the school fund. It's in a separate fund. So to be able to deal with the smoothing of the debts that you're not worried in a given year. Well, this year it's only going up 1%. Next year it's going to go up 10%. That may be a problem for me and my family. We're going to actually create a fund balance, totally separate from the school fund balance, totally separate from the town fund balance, in terms of how we set up this tax structure so that we're going to be able to have funding that on the years where we're going to see a spike, we're able to pay some of that down to mitigate the impact for all residents. So that's a critical piece of it that is difficult without a lot of explanation to walk you through. And I'd rather not do it on a slide that gives truly hypotheticals that may not be relevant to you, because I still think we're a little too early in the process to be able to do that. The only other thing I wanted to note is why on Monday, and I would tune into that meeting if you want to see the council deliberate on where they want to fall in terms of a maximum amount on enabling legislation. So the reason why we're talking about 150 or 180 is really because of the pending legislation. So if pending legislation is approved and we increase from 35 to 40, which increases our potential recovery from 52.5 now to 60, makes a significant difference on overall cost. And I'll show you how. The last example we were working at was 130 million. Right now, maximum 52.5% recovery, which is 68.2 million. Our out-of-pocket cost is just under 62 million. That's for 130 million. Now, at 150 million, that 52.5% is 71.2. So it's about $10 million increase. So 10 million, that's real money, okay? That's going to increase these slides. That's going to put additional pressure. But if we're able to lobby and secure the additional 5% from 35 to 40, which gives us another 7.25 points from 52.5 to 60, we can borrow 150 million for less money. It only costs, we're going to be paying out 60 million, not the 62 million. So there is tremendous value for the district in this long-term plan if we're able to work with our legislature and have that bottom limit of 35 increased to 40. So that opens up all sorts of possibilities, which all of the previous speakers had referenced. The issue of the 180 and where that number came from, I think it came from a couple places. One was the last forum where there was significant outcry for potential investment in the high school. It was looking back at the option C2, which for 2 new elementaries, they're about 500 at Hannaford and Frenchtown. It provided for, that was a $150 million plan. The 180 provides for additional funding. In one option, it becomes a realm of possibility. So the council does not have to make a decision on the ballot question until August. The legislative session ends in June. So they're going to have all the information they need in June or earlier if the pending legislation is voted on to make this decision. There's one scenario where it actually works. It's 180 million and it's the 60% plus the reference that Derek made to potential other energy recovery, right? And he and I talked about this before the meeting. It might mean additional investment in the building to get to net zero, some points of construction that we haven't factored in yet. So the likelihood of getting the 5% is probably pretty slim, but it is a possibility. It's a real thing. If we were to borrow $180 million and get 65% reimbursement, that costs us $63 million. It's right in the sweet spot of the 60 to 65 million. And now you would have 180 million. You'd have $50 million for the high school. You'd have 2 new elementary schools. You'd have a pre-KK. I mean, that's a totally transformational impact. And for the taxpayers, it's no more money than the $130 million option at 52.5%. It's the same. So I ask you not to get too focused on the size. Tough to do. You see the headline, 150, 180 million. We can't afford that, and that's where everybody stops. It's what we owe that really matters, not the amount of money. The 180 million, if that was invested in the community, you wouldn't be touching your schools for another 25, 30 years. I mean, so that's a major opportunity. So I just wanted to I'm going to stop. I just wanted to give you that perspective going into the meeting on Monday. Council is absolutely not obligated to fund 150 or 180 million come August for the November ballot. And by then they will have all the information they need to make the right decision for the community at that time.